Alright, so first and foremost, I want to say thank you to both of you guys for even showing up today and taking some time out of your day to help us with this scientific study that's been taking us nearly almost 20 or more years now. So as you guys know, the study is to find out who is the more mentally tough person, a bodybuilder or a marathon runner. So I do have a questionnaire right here that you guys are going to be filling out, and whoever answers it the best of their ability obviously is the more mentally tough person. So I'm gonna hand both of these out right now. All right, now you have about 15 to 20 or so minutes to fill these out. And in the meantime, sorry guys, I had Chipotle before I came here and it's just now hitting me that new spicy chicken's no joke. We both know who this is gonna be. This is too easy. Oh yeah, and who do you think that's gonna be? Well, obviously it's gonna be me. It's definitely not gonna be you. There's nothing really honestly hard about running on some stilts with a 95-pound body. I mean, come on. Oh well, at least I'm not some narcissist who looks in every single mirror he walks past. Oh yeah, well at least I'm not so skinny that I have to run around in the shower to get wet. Oh well, at least I'm not compensating for a little, you know what. Hopefully during your races you don't wear yellow because they might mistake you for a pencil for how skinny you are. You can't even touch the middle of your back. Okay, well guess what? At least if a shark came onto land, I could fight it with no freaking legs and with my hands tied behind my freaking back. What do you even, no you can't, this doesn't even make sense. I've never even heard, you know what? Screw this, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done too. Go back in that pack with the other number 2s they belong with. All I gotta say is do not get that new habanero chicken gut. Yo, what is going on everyone, and welcome back to another YouTube video. For any of you guys that are new here, my name is Levi. On today's video, I want to discuss which is harder, a bodybuilding show or a marathon. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I feel like if you were to put those two types of people in the room, be like,
all right, man, we're gonna take a survey on which one is more difficult.
They would just argue like with each other. They would just go back and forth and just be like,
oh, well, this is more difficult because of this, and
this is more difficult because of this. But as someone who has done both, I'm here to give my opinion. I wanted to say the truth, but obviously at the end of the day, it's an opinion. Like I can't say what I'm saying right now is a fact, even though I want to. So essentially how we're gonna be doing this is I have 5 categories that I'm gonna be putting bodybuilding and marathon in head to head on. So for the first one, we're gonna be doing diet, and I'm gonna be discussing, you know, the aspects of the diet for both bodybuilding and marathoning. And then whatever one wins the most difficulty out of all the 5 categories is the most difficult one. And again, my opinion, this isn't a fact, even though it should be. It's like they start using my video for like a fact check. That'd be actually hilarious. Like I said, the first one we're gonna be starting out with is diet. Let me just say the bodybuilding diet compared to a marathon diet program is way more difficult by a landslide. Like when you are doing a bodybuilding show, you are literally starving yourself. I remember at one point I ate like 1,600 calories for a week straight. And for a man with like a good amount of muscle on them that is super difficult to even do. Like I don't think anyone in their day-to-day even eats 1,600 calories unless you're like 5 years old. Even if you're 5 years old, like you might even eat more than that. I don't know. I just remember that the dieting to bodybuilding was so difficult that I would purposely go to bed earlier so that I could just wake up and eat. Does that make sense? Like I would literally go to bed earlier so that it felt like time went by faster just so I could wake up and eat again. That's how difficult it is with marathoning. Obviously you're trying to fuel your body, so you're not really like starving at any times. I mean, there was times where I was definitely hungry, but not like bodybuilding. Bodybuilding definitely takes the cake on dieting for sure. The next thing we're gonna move on to is training. And let me just say that bodybuilding training is difficult. Don't get me wrong. Like it's hard to do your posing after your workout. It's super hard to even go and do a workout when you are at like 7% body fat and your body just feels weak. You feel super flat. You honestly just feel like shit. Like I don't want to undercredit that at all, but marathon training definitely takes a cake in difficulty. And the reason being is because, at least for me in my situation, I think it's more based on where I live, because I still think this one is debatable. For me, it was more difficult because of the elements outside. You know, running itself is hard, but when you have to go run in 38-degree rain, that's a whole other story. Like you can't not go run outside. I mean, you could run on a treadmill, but then that is just, it's super bad for your body. And so the reason that the training was more difficult for me in terms of marathon training is because not only am I going out there and putting a lot of impact and pressure on my body, but just the elements makes it that much worse, because at least when I would go to a gym, like there's cover over my head, sure, it might be a little hot in the gym or whatever, but being out in 38-degree rain sucks. Like, it sucks. And then afterward, just being so beat up because you ran like 18 plus miles just for, that's what you had to do. It sucks. So marathon training definitely kicks bodybuilding's ass, in my opinion, for the difficulty. For this category, we're going to do time. And this one was kind of difficult for me because obviously, like, I do both lifting and I do running as well. Maybe not, obviously, maybe I'm actually like really small, or maybe you think I'm like too big to run. I don't know. But I do both. As you guys watch my channel, like, I do both. And this was hard for me because I had to take myself out, especially when I was deciding on which one takes up more time in your life, because I was also, doing heavy weight training while I also ran my marathon. So I had to judge just marathon training by itself alone and then bodybuilding training alone just by itself alone. And by doing that, I was able to formulate that bodybuilding was more difficult in terms of the time aspect that it takes away from your everyday life. So my marathon training would probably max take up to like 2.5 hours sometimes. So that, little portion of my day isn't too much, as to where bodybuilding is literally every single second of the day. Like, you wake up in the morning, you go to the gym, you do your posing routine, and then every single part of the day you're on like, a time schedule for your diet. And I'm not saying that you don't do the same thing for marathon training, but it's going to be based off of this. You're based on how you perform. And so having to always be on the clock, always be on like a certain schedule, like bodybuilding completely just, it takes over your life at one point, essentially. Like, when you sign up to do a bodybuilding show, you're not signing up just to go,
hey, I'm gonna go step on stage.
No, you're signing a contract basically saying that you're gonna devote 3 months out of your life to basically go on lockdown and just be super grind mode.
This is Penny and Chip, and say hello to used napkin.
This next category was super hard for me to determine which one was gonna be more difficult. And the reason being is because they were pretty equal until I had a realization about one. And so I just wanted to briefly talk about the mental challenges of both. So for, marathon training, it's pretty mentally challenging. Like, especially because you're working yourself into a shape that you've maybe never been in your life. That was the case for me. And when you're building yourself up into that shape, there's a lot of runs where you go out and you're hitting a mile marker that you've never hit before. And when you hit that mile marker, your body starts to go, oh, we've never done this before, Like, basically a whole bunch of signals are going off in your body telling you that you're very uncomfortable right now. And having to mentally say to yourself, like, no, I'm going to push past this feeling of uncomfort. Day fucking hard! And continue to run because this is the only way that I'm going to get better. It's super difficult. It's a mind game that you're playing with yourself for sure, and it's a challenge nonetheless. And the rain and the elements make that challenge much more harder. And sometimes even just getting, mentally prepared to go on a run is super difficult as well. And I would say that challenge in itself is just, it's immense. Like, it's immensely difficult. But bodybuilding, on the other hand, you have the challenge of, restricting yourself from binging on food. You have, challenge of doing your posing every day, the workout, when you're like sub 7% body fat, like, it all sucks. And so I compare those two and I was like, dang, they're pretty similar. But the only reason that this one won is because the duration of how long you are basically in a mental fight is bodybuilding. So bodybuilding, you're in a fight all day because you're starving from the time you wake up, basically from the time you go to bed. And there's a bunch of things that you have to do throughout the day as well. Like, your posing might not be at the same time as your lift, and your lift might not be at the same time as something else. And so you're just constantly throughout the day going through mental challenges, as where, training for a marathon, you just kind of have like that set time prior to your run and during your run where it's a mental challenge. And so that's why bodybuilding takes a cake and being more mentally difficult. The last and final category that I have is competition day. And I felt that this was important because a lot always goes into competition day. This is the most stressful out of both a bodybuilding show and a marathon because you want to make sure everything goes right? And for a bodybuilding show, I compared it to the marathon training, and I realized right away that the bodybuilding show comp day is way more difficult than the marathon comp day. And the reason being is because there's so much more uncertainty with, you know, the bodybuilding show day, you know, because you don't know how everyone else is going to look there. You don't know if like you came in that shredded. Like there's a lot more doubt and a lot more, I'll say, mental games again, and just that much more uncertainty starts to arise. And also when you're, you know, preparing for a bodybuilding show, you don't know how your body is going to respond to the things that you do. So you don't know coming into show day if you're going to be too overweight, too lean, maybe too flat, or if your carbs aren't going to hit. Like you could easily just time your carbs just the wrong way and they won't hit. So luckily for me, my carbs hit on time. So I was super vascular the day of show. My muscles were full. I mean, you can miss a time on like a carb load for a marathon as well, and that can affect your marathon time quite a bit. But at the same time, I felt, for me at least, during my marathon, like I trained up for it. I knew how much work I put in, and I felt it was a lot more controllable, because if you've been, you know, preparing for a marathon, you know, you've trained yourself up to run that distance and whatnot, there shouldn't really be that big of an argument for if you're going to do good or not based on, you know, if you did what you had to do. So just based on the amount of uncertainty that there is in bodybuilding, that's why it was more difficult than the show day of a marathon. In all, at the end of the day, doing a marathon or doing a bodybuilding show are extremely, extremely hard things. And that's why only a very, very small percentage of the population actually does either or. But if I were to judge which one is harder at the end of the day, bodybuilding definitely takes a cake in being more difficult than training for a marathon. And I left a couple things out in this video other than the 5 categories that I split it onto why bodybuilding is more difficult. And some of the things I briefly wanted to mention is that, you know, with a bodybuilding show, your sleep gets messed up because you're just starving, and going to bed starving sucks. Like I'm trying to compare something to going to bed starving, and I can't come up with anything other than the fact, like, if you've ever gone pee before and it burns. Okay, like, I don't have an STD, I swear, but like I've had that happen before. Anyway, I wish I didn't say that. That just sounds terrible, but you get the point. It's super difficult. And also you're very moody. So there was some times when I was with my friends, and I think it was Ezra, for example, and we were paddleboarding one day, and he was like, dude, what's wrong? And I was like, nothing. Like I was just super irritable because I hadn't had any food. So there's a lot more that goes into bodybuilding that I think makes it more difficult. And at the end of the day, again, bodybuilding is just simply more difficult than training for a marathon. That is going to do it for today's video. Hope you guys liked today's video. If you guys did, be sure to give it a freaking like. And if any of you guys are new here, do not forget to press that subscribe button, because you guys know I will be back. And as always, die trying to do what you love, because guess what? The sky's the limit. And I will see y'all in the next one.